So the next speaker, Tim, is a Compliance and Information Governance Manager at the Imperial College in London. And he's worked in ICT and information management. We're all saying how long we've been working. It's a bit dodgy, isn't it? So Tim is raising the stakes with 20 years, 18 of which were spent in local government. He has been a data protection officer for 2 councils, and I'm going into that page. And he's moved into the higher education, I think, last year. And he leads the ICT department at the Imperial College of London on GDPR. So his title is Geek-DPR. See what you did there? How you still need ICT. Tim.
Wonderful. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for hanging around, especially for the IT bit. Can I ask before I start, how many people work in IT? Oh my word, right, okay, so this is, well, yeah, I mean, this may well be a session of self-love, if you forgive the expression. What we're trying to do with this is to talk about, indeed, for the people watching, I didn't mean that. What we're going to try and talk about, I guess, is how IT positions itself then in terms of achieving GDPR, and for the non-ICT people amongst us, how you need to embrace us. Now, I admit that we might be a bit unapproachable at times. We're quite scruffy, socially awkward. We like things like ZX Spectrums on holdalls and things like that. But actually, if you get to know us, we're really, really good, especially because we can help with one of the major things that we need to deal with in the GDPR, which is the compliance with Article 32. So this has been mentioned by my fellow speakers previously. Appropriate technical and organisational measures. Again, we're continuing from where we were under the Data Protection Act. But I think the big thing under the regulation now is this reference to state of the art and the idea that we have to keep playing catch up with the evolution of technology. You'll remember the good old days before 2010 when you could lose a laptop and no one would be that bothered about it. Obviously, that changes with the ICO power to fine, and also the insistence that now laptops should be encrypted. So, of course, you see them all on Twitter. When someone has a security incident, they've lost a laptop and, it wasn't encrypted. And we take a bet on how big the fine's going to be, 70, 80, 90, 100,000 pounds. With Article 32, we're looking at this evolution. And so what will be tomorrow's encryption? Will it be that we should have 2-factor authentication? Will it be that we need to make sure there are certain conditions in place around the cloud? Where IT will be able to help, of course, is looking at this and thinking about what the kind of current position is so that you, as an organisation, aren't lagging behind. And then, of course, we focus on the magic triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and they're very much the watchwords in information IT and certainly information security. And then we look at the rest of the processor here, and yeah, making sure we comply fully with these particular aspects, and we're talking about destruction, loss, alteration, making sure that we can actually track what's happening to our data and prevent the bad things from happening. So from a regulation standpoint, IT are very much in the game here, and we need to make sure that we can focus upon that. Now, with IT, and where's Paul? Oh, he's not here. We are very much subject to a kind of a supplier feeding frenzy, which was the term I heard last week. And certainly any of you that are driving your GDPR projects at the moment, you will have had IT suppliers on the phone saying that we have the magic solution to all of your compliance requirements. That's not necessarily true, and of course it's a cliche to say that GDPR is not an ICT project, and that's fair enough. But there is, and needs to be recognition that IT can obviously help with an awful lot of things that are required under the regulation. And actually, you need to have this collaborative approach to do this together. Which is that we can't buy compliance through an ICT system. There's no silver bullet. I'm sure that's what that is. Your IT team can become your best friends. And there are things out there, and we're going to go through a list of solutions which can assist us. This isn't a marketing spiel. All views are personal, and it's certainly not representing Imperial College or doing anyone rational in terms of what's good out there and what isn't. We have had discussions about this. So I chair a group called IG for HE, which is a London-based group of higher education kind of information governance practitioners. And we've had a supplier showcase where someone has come in and talked us through the art of the possible in terms of the solutions that are available out there. And that's fine if you've got money, but we'll come on to that a bit later on. But what I wanted to just try and do was think, there are things out there that GDPR professionals can engage with. But also your own IT department will have things in the locker that can assist you as well. And it's about taking advantage of those as much as possible. You will likely need an ICT GDPR work stream looking at your existing systems and how can we ensure that they are GDPR match fit, I think the phrase is. And as I said, they will hold data on your data. They've got the metadata. They're able to find stuff for you. The things that they know about, great. They can also help, hopefully, with some of the shadowy IT aspects, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. There are 12 steps, and you would have seen this diagram, possibly every GDPR presentation you've attended in the last 18 months or so. And IT can help with a lot of this stuff. In terms of awareness, we can certainly make, we're talking about decision makers here, but in terms of security training, identify what we hold. Obviously, websites are holding the privacy notices and bits and pieces. In terms of how we exercise individuals' rights, how they exercise them and how you assist with that, finding the data, doing the rectification, doing the deletion, etc., is all fair game. Moving into subject access requests. Bit less on this side, but then data breaches, of course. IT are going to be pivotal parts in this. To what extent are IT the first port of call when you have a security breach? To what extent can they insist in stopping the bad things happening and investigating what has happened? To what extent could IT or somebody else provide some post-incident assistance in terms of providing assurance to people that actually their stuff is okay? This was just a minor blip and it doesn't really happen. Data protection by design, making sure that privacy is considered at the outset of these great ideas for projects and business processes. We need to review and conduct these data privacy impact assessments early doors in the project management cycle, but also when we're reviewing business processes. IT can obviously help advise in that regard as well. So a large number of those IT can assist with. And again, we flesh this out to look at things around discovery, the reviewing of systems. And we get this in Imperial where people have wonderful ideas about, can we use this kind of Facebook collaborative environment to hold our data? We'd rather you didn't. Because there is so much stuff out there, and people have these wonderful ideas. And IT obviously has to encourage development and innovation, and that's good, but obviously just make sure that in terms of our data, we've taken all appropriate risks to make sure that nothing bad can happen to it. Obviously, the day-to-day stuff that we do, security networks, devices, storage, reviewing the suppliers, thinking about where the data is in the supply chain. And in that regard, we work very closely with Angeli's legal people to make sure that we are thinking about those areas of vulnerability. We look at the assessments. We satisfy ourselves around 27001, etc. And we'll talk a little bit about that down the line. So that is a kind of a typical work stream, and we have an ICT subgroup at Imperial that is looking at these issues in conjunction with, kind of almost independent of, the main GDPR project that's happening in college. And it's really important to wedge this governance in at every possible stage. So again, Imperial's IT department, we have now got a DPIA early doors in our project management methodology. There is, we think, and it's a little bit unclear, it's almost kind of great myth in our college, that there is a general project management methodology. But as far as IT are concerned, we've got this now. This is a gateway. People can't proceed unless they've conducted a DPIA, or at least a screening assessment as to whether one is necessary. We also have consideration of information governance and security issues in our service transition process. When we've got something, we're about to set it live, in our weekly change board, dealing with incident management, of course, and indeed assessments about cloud security and where that sits. But there are other areas where IT and information governance or records management need to come together. We have in Imperial 350 applications. and a truckload of unstructured data. At what point are the retention periods being applied? And is it that IT go to records management and say, how long should this stuff be kept for? Or are records management coming to IT and saying, oh, hang on a second, you've got this stuff going back 20, 30 years. You need to get rid. The two things seem to operate independently, and we are trying to kind of come together to look at these particular issues. How can we bring people tempted by shadow IT back into the fold? A rough estimate of shadow IT. And so this is stuff which it's IT, but it doesn't come through centrally procured systems. In Imperial, we reckon the same amount is spent on IT that we don't know about as that we do know about. And that's not something we're particularly proud of. But this is it. People go off, they get their cloud storage, they put a Linux box under their desk. How can we, as a nice, friendly IT department, try and encourage them to actually look at us as the first port of call rather than them scuttling off to PC World or whatever it is? So, especially with this fairly relaxed approach, shall we say, to corporate governance. So we really want to try and bring people back in. And actually part of that is going to be the idea that we can encourage innovation. We can give them a secure environment for their data. Increasingly, people that are providing data for us to do research on, NHS Digital, for example, are going to be looking for secure environments for that to be placed. So we're going and trying to get things like ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials, to just try and give people confidence that we are holding data in a secure, structured manner. And you can't achieve these certifications without the involvement of ICT. Well, you could try, but you will not be successful. You also need to think about your information asset owners, data owners. One of the things that we're trying to do with the advent of our information asset register, and I'll talk about that in a second, is to try and restate a governance model that puts the risk and the management of the information at the hands of the information asset owner rather than something sitting somewhere between IT, legal, risk, records, etc. So, as part of our information asset register and trying to identify assets and the things related to them, we are asking our information asset owners a series of questions around this. Can we delete records? Can we perform batch deletion, etc.? Now, it may well be that they don't have the answers to that, in which case they need to engage ICT. And to get that assurance that both from a kind of a business sense and a technical sense, we know what's happening with all of our records. We talk about the right to data portability. We consider where data is hosted. And again, of course, as we've said frequently through today, the extent to which we can notify the ICO within 72 hours. So there is this need and this symbiotic relationship, I guess. The information asset owners in the business are going to need to love IT. And maybe it's a mutual exchange, I don't know. What can we bring to compliance in terms of what's available? So, if you had an unlimited amount of money to splash out on ICT solutions for GDPR, you could put some of these things in place. You could track changes to data. You could find where stuff is. You could apply classifications to it, so you could then stop things happening as a result. And that allied with things like data loss prevention, preventing material being sent unless it's sent through a secure route, for example. We can mask data. One of the things that we're having with some of our databases is the idea that it's kind of like Jenga. If you pull a record out, the whole thing comes toppling down. So what we're trying to do with that is to mask and take data kind of out of circulation so that the integrity remains, but it's not in use. Just going down very briefly, talking about things like user rights management, who's accessed what, when, auditing, making sure that we know what's happened to that data asset at any particular time. And VIP data privacy sounds fantastic, doesn't it? I assume that's when we roll the red carpet out to the Chancellor or something like that. Okay. So a few things that we look at here. Data discovery. So there are various solutions out there to help you discover data on your systems. I mean, we are trialing one at the moment in Imperial to try and kind of sort of deep dive across the network and try and find things, look at various patterns, etc. But it may well be that your own IT teams or your suppliers, of course, if you've outsourced your IT, can assist you in looking at your shared drives and try and track this stuff. Certainly, one of the things that we had with the Information Asset Register was kind of a two-pronged approach. So on the one hand, we're sending out a questionnaire and getting people to fill stuff in about their information assets. On the other hand, we're looking at the stuff that we have from an ICT perspective and thinking, well, okay, we support these systems, but what's on these systems? Does anyone know? And so we've tried to kind of bring those things together in the Information Asset Register, but also to try and spot patterns and types of data. Credit card numbers, for example, one of the things that actually we shouldn't be holding on our network. So occasionally we scan and we have a look just to see whether anyone has accidentally, hopefully, got a credit card number in an email or a document or something along those lines. So it's really important that we try and find and have an understanding of what our data is. And also thinking about the rights to that data. To what extent do we have the right permissions on the folder structures? To what extent has someone just put a document into a shared area and inadvertently shared it with 1,000 people or so, when actually they should really have drilled down to their own particular record? And multiple copies of the system. Now, some organisations have got a few of these systems, aren't they? This is a spreadsheet that has now taken on a whole life of its own, become the system. And if we lose the system, then we can't survive any longer. What we're trying to do with those is say, right, well, okay, you want to have this as a kind of a pseudo information asset. Well, let's manage it properly. Let's put it in somewhere where you can actually share it rather than have individual copies of it. If we are going to have to take it home, let's look at structured ways in which we can provide access to this stuff as well. And I mean, that echoes a point that was talked about this morning in terms of these spreadsheets and what happens to them. And obviously they're taking a life of their own. In terms of data loss prevention, and this is the thing we were talking about, the credit card numbers, analysing content for keywords and phrases, classifying the data, and then insisting on certain types of behaviour. So one system that I was aware of back in my local authority days, you would be able to receive a pop-up when you went to send information of that particular category that would say, oh, hang on a second, do you want to use secure email to send that? Because actually this stuff is sensitive personal data and needs a greater level of protection. And any of you that are kind of in an Office 365 or Azure environment, there is that functionality there. We're trying to explore that. We're not 100% familiar with it at the moment, but certainly there are things there that can help you protect that data leaving, or indeed within your own network. Some solutions are able to prohibit onward dissemination. So if they receive a document, an email with the information in, and then they try to forward it, that can be blocked, or it gets being sent, but then you wind up having to approve the access of that third party to access that data. So there's some really good stuff out there to try and look at the data and what's happening to it. In terms of subject access, again, we've talked about the reduced time limit here. Again, IT can help you locate data across the various sources that are there. But then how do you get that to the individual? And it was interesting to hear what they were saying at Godwin about the portal aspect and the idea that you could put data there for someone to actually download. And again, there are systems out there in the market, and you may well have hubs that you've developed yourself that will allow you to do that. So it would certainly save an awful lot of trees in printing things out, and people remarking on the glory days of redaction and having to photocopy things 3 times and all the rest of it. This would be a great way of getting information out within the time limit in a usable format for the data subject, be they a student or a member of staff. We spoke about information asset registers, and again, just very briefly, these are the reasons why we are going to have this within GDPR. But, I mean, Imperial were embarking on the Information Asset Register anyway, and that sounds quite churlish, doesn't it? It's not like that at all. We were told from an audit, and it's always good to have audits telling you things that you probably should know yourself, that we had no real handle on where our information was. So we've decided to put this thing in place. GDPR comes along on the rails. And in terms of the regulation, we're ticking these boxes, making sure we've got an idea of processing activities, making sure that we can assist in terms of subject access rights, thinking about the relevance and adequacy of the data we're holding, and identify where it goes. The solution that we have purchased, as far as the Information Asset Register, is very good at identifying the assets and then where it flows to in terms of other bits of college, other organisations, etc. So we're ticking a lot of boxes with our Information Asset Register, and we've kind of gone beyond the spreadsheets that others are using, and that's fine. But in trying to do that, what we wanted to do is say to people, look, we're going to give you a system by which you can manage this information asset. But actually, your role of information asset owner means that you need to take a more proactive role in managing your stuff. So, like I say, we're focusing on all assets rather than just personal data. And there's going to be a glorious conversation that we're going to be having with people in the business where we go to them and we say, congratulations, you are the information asset owner. And this is what it means. You need to think about the Dr. Pepper question. What's the worst that can happen to your data? Who's it shared with? Who has access to it? What's the purpose of it? How do we maintain data quality, etc.? And traditionally, they would sit back and say, "Wow, no, that's IT's responsibility, isn't it?" Well, not really. They carry the risk. They will need to arrange training for the people that are accessing their information asset. And this can be anywhere. This can be a system. This can be a file and a folder. Somebody asked me over the weekend about blood samples and whether they constitute information. I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I guess we have genetic information up for grabs within the regulation. Maybe we have the records about the blood. I don't know. But like I said, with all of this stuff, this is the things that happen at the business level. Your IT people don't usually get involved with blood, as a rule. It depends who you've spoken to, I guess. Really important that the staff actually access this and update the records, because then it becomes living and breathing. It's not waiting for IT to come around once a year and go, is this changed or not? And what we're trying to do with our information asset register is to embed it in the kind of the organisational fabric of the college, to make sure that we've got a feed in, so that actually the changing shape of the organisation can be reflected in the solution. And what happens when an information asset is orphaned from its owner? Well, we'll get an alert through to me, I suspect, and we can actually try and then reallocate that to an information asset owner and get them to kind of own that. So it's really important that we're trying to get this kind of revised governance arrangement in under, I guess, the noses of other people, but just to try it and re-energise this focus here. There's lots of stuff we can do in terms of policies, training and awareness. Am I allowed to mention UCISA? Is that all right? Yeah, good. So UCISA have got this new information security training, which is doing the rounds at the moment. We've made it compulsory within Imperial. IT were the guinea pigs to start with, so that's another reason to love them, is they always take the hit on behalf of the wider organisation as a rule. IT can also help with training deployment, so we can track the results. One of the things that we had wrong previously was that we were doling out the training and not recording the results. And if you know anything, the first thing that the Information Commissioner Office asks in the event of a security incident is, can you show me your training records? And it's essential that we just try and get on top of this and make sure that we've got stats that we can wave at the ICO in the event of a breach. ICT can also help in terms of the messages, the policy pop-ups. We're going to be having a campaign in the run-up to Data Privacy Day, which is very good, 28th of January, and we'll be relying on some kind of comms messages to go out to people just to try and encourage them to think about the policy framework, which again is sitting, of course, up on our website. We're also trying to get people to look at the freely available resources out there, the webinars, the YouTube content. We've got an approach to kind of informal comms, which is our Yammer site. So this is where we kind of sit around and laugh at Morrison's and anyone else that's had a data breach. Not because we're nasty, but just to try and learn from the incidents there. And certainly one of the things that we have at IG for HE, when we have the national GISC group for the HEFE Information Compliance Group, is a Information Security Incident Roundup, where we look at what's happened and we just try and pick out the salient points for us to learn from. One of the other solutions that you can get is a web-based policy acceptance system. So you can deliver content to desktop. You could take your data protection policy, your information security policy, you could make it pop up on someone's computer, and it would sit there, and they would be unable to do any work until they got rid of it. Now, that's a lot of fun, especially when it pops up during a lecture or something like that, and you've got people there. But the point is that we're trying to get people to engage with the material. And also, this doesn't just have to be for information security or data protection. You could whack your equalities policies through there, your drugs at work, all of this other type of stuff. One of the things that I think we need to think about, certainly from an IT perspective, is when we're doing this stuff, we need to think about wider corporate applications, because again, that helps with business case as well. Oh, and here it is. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be watertight, or you're going to go back and be able to grab truckloads of resource from your team, but just thinking about this, I think, yeah, we mentioned the fine, and we talk about talk, and the idea that under the old regime they got fined 400 grand, under the new regime it would have been 59 million. You know, the money side is obviously very pertinent. But I think for us and where we are in higher education, and for, I guess, for further education as well, apologies if I've been ignoring you, is that so far we've been below the radar. And that's a blessing on the one hand. It's a curse if you actually want a decent answer out of the ICO on any point of policy, of course. But you know, we can't rely upon that forever. You know, you say the Information Commissioner's office has always been focused on local government. You know, I spent a number of years working in an organisation, an industry that apparently wasn't fit for purpose when it came to handling personal data, which is how local government was being regarded. Is the same true as far as higher education is concerned? I'll leave that one with you. But again, the impact on us as organisations, we have a large data breach and stuff goes missing. Does that affect, or could it affect our ranking? Could it affect funding? Could it affect people who want to come and do research with us? The trust of our staff and our students. What are those implications there? And again, it's kind of untested, and I guess, I think the main thing is you don't want to be the first to be penalised by the ICO, do you? The benefits of all of this stuff and investing in IT to try and help us over the line for GDPR, but also to improve the way we hold our stuff, is that we will have better quality data. We therefore make better decisions, we have better research, we have a more efficient workforce. We have better informed staff. And like I say, you consider how the stuff that we have can be applied away from information governance. It is the right thing for us to do to help people uphold their rights and exercise their rights. So there's an ethical issue there. There is a return of investment argument, certainly as well, in terms of the money spent on this stuff can improve the way we work. It may well lead to pound signs and all the rest of it. This is an alternative to cost avoidance. And of course, on the basis of this session, we'll go back and say, oh, what are they doing in IT? Everyone else is doing it, so why aren't we? If there's ever one industry that likes to kind of keep up with the Joneses, it's higher education, isn't it? And we want to try and all be at the same level when it comes to holding data. Here are a few solutions here. Like I say, I'm not recommending any of these, but just in terms of what's available out there, and it's a rather scrambled slide, isn't it? You've got data classification, breach notification, data discovery, policy administration, that's the delivering to desktop, data loss prevention. All of these things are there. Check them out. You'll probably receive phone calls from them at various points anyway. And I just wanted to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.